Hello and welcome back. It has been quite the month of Test cricket, and we are firmly in the era of Bazball. 3 tests and 3 incredible wins for an England side that now look top of the world after the introduction of Brendon McCullum as head coach and Ben Stokes as captain. I'm very pleased to be joined again by Oscar Livesey-Lodwick, who managed to call quite an awful lot right for the England v New Zealand Test series. What have you made of those games?
To be honest with you, we were absolutely blown away. Coming from that West Indies tour where, 1 from 17, I think even if we watch back our preview for this series, well, the series has passed us, we were quite sort of pessimistic. What would happen if an England collapse occurred on day 1 or day 2? And we probably were more critical of Brendon McCullum's appointment than probably, the former. So we weren't really praising the appointment, but I think now everyone is absolutely buzzing. Bazball is flying, even though he doesn't really like the term himself. From what I've seen in interviews, the coolest man in Test cricket, I'd describe him. And him and Stokes are just an absolute marriage, really. You hear the rumours of Stokes going in there and Headingley and saying, an evening session, let's chase 290 down in 40 overs or something. So this New England team, it's ruffled some feathers, definitely. I think if we look at some of the, past Test players for England and some of the former players from around the world, they're probably saying it's not sustainable, which I might agree with. Going forward when we play against some top teams, there might be some problems that we encounter, especially looking to the Ashes and some series in Pakistan in the winter. So I'm not so sure how sustainable this method is. But what it is going to do is provide, the most entertaining form of cricket. And as one of their mission statements is to transform the game of Test cricket, and they've done that already in the space of 3 games.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to look at those targets as well that were chased down, all of which are comfortably amongst the highest we've actually seen chased down in England, and also noticeably, all of which had come after bowlers had notable successes early on in the first innings, and also not exactly in these lovely sunny climes. I remember, of course, the incredible Ashes turnaround. Ball went very soft there, and the sun was shining. That was not the case necessarily for the New Zealand series. Any pointers to take from which players really stood up? I mean, obviously Johnny Bairstow in incredible form and Matt Potts with the ball, but was there anything else you noticed?
Yeah, lots. There's so much to take away from it. I think, like you said, the successful run chasers, I think that all 3 of them were ranked inside our top 10 ever in Test cricket for England in the modern era. So it tells you, what this England team are going to do. For us stats men out there, it's going to be breaking stats every Test match, which I can't wait to see. But yeah, I think if you look at Bairstow, an obvious standout for the way he played. An amazing statistic with Bairstow. If we look at all his hundreds, I saw a piece earlier on today where all his hundreds in Test cricket have come where we've been on the back foot, which is quite often. So we've been at scores of 132 for 5, 141 for 5, 100 for 5, 90 for 5, 66, 56 for 5. And then when he came together with Jamie Overton, there was sort of a sense of inevitability that those two would put on a big stand. Not so Jamie, but with Johnny, the way he's playing. Root, obviously, I spoke in the preview for the New Zealand series how Root will carry on for sort of business as usual. He looked imperious again, and I can see no reason why he's going to let off against an Indian attack. Jack Leach, really, really happy for him. 10 for 166 in that last Test match at Headingley. He just loves the place, doesn't he? That one not out with Stokes in the Ashes, and now this, his career best figures, and only amongst a fine amount of people to take a 10 for, or 2 5-wicket hauls in 2 innings. I think he's the third spinner in Test cricket history amongst Shane Warne and Muralifian. So quite a nice list to be amongst there for taking 2 separate 5-wicket hauls. So yeah, Leach, I think he's going to go from strength to strength. And interestingly, the poor form of Crawley and maybe Lees, we know that McCullum is going to stick by these players. He said loyalty is massive for him with this team. He wants to show the faith and see the improvements and grow in confidence. And I think that's something we're going to have to take into account when we're punting on England going forward, is give the players the time, and there will be the day where they're going to come good, which we'll get onto a bit later. But yeah, Potts, fantastic. Looks completely at home. Bowls a really good ball, doesn't he? I think bowls a really brilliant ball. And then Broad and Anderson don't look particularly out of shape as well. So yeah, lots to take forward. But I will mention, it was like playing a New Zealand over 55 team. There wasn't a great deal of I feel versatility with their team. I think it was quite sort of, we knew what we were getting. We've seen Wagner, we've seen Southey, we've seen Bolt, we've seen the likes of Latham, etc. But yeah, fair play to Daryl Mitchell as well. Amazing series.
Absolutely, he was brilliant. A pointer I think it's important to take betting wise. We did talk about this, I think, before the first test, but the sheer amount of in-play opportunities, even when you have a relatively strong market view pre-test, were incredible. You were regularly getting prices of double figures for both England and New Zealand, and also the draw at all points of the test series. And the market was really reacting to partnerships. It was reacting hugely to Daryl Mitchell and Tom Blundell, driving New Zealand almost towards evens, only for a breakthrough to come, whether it be through Leach or Potts doing that work, or Anderson. And then suddenly you'd have the exact same position, but in reverse by the end of the day's play. And I think that's really worth looking forward to. If you can't make up your mind pre-match, but you like a side, it's definitely worth keeping an eye on those in-play markets. Now we have what should be an absolutely fascinating game. There's some unfinished business because India, of course, were cruelly denied the chance to complete, in the eyes of their fans, a test victory, and we were denied the chance to pull that series back. That test is going to be played. It starts tomorrow, or possibly even today when you're watching it, and the prices are as follows. England are 5-6, the draws 130, India are 5-2. With draw no bets, England are 4-9, and India are 7-4. And we'll just run through some top bats for the first innings. Joe Root's 9-4 favourite, Johnny Bairstow's 4-1, Ollie Pope in at 5s, 11-2 Ben Stokes, Alex Lee's 6s, that's for England. For India, Virat Kohli's 3-1, Rohit Sharma, who was a doubt in terms of fitness, is 7-2, Pujara's 4s, Agrawal's 9-2, Shubman Gill's 5s, 11-2 for vice captain Rishabh Pant, and it's Anderson and Bumrah. You will be very surprised to learn who are leading the first innings bowling markets. That's the top wicket taker, of course.
Yeah. So I think personally, that series last summer was, the return of Test cricket for us. Post-COVID, the first proper series with fans back. Very tense, very very fierce series. Both teams going at each other very hard, and obviously we had the whole debacle from the Indians going back to India to prepare for the IPL, which was left sort of a sour taste in all English fans' mouth. So for me, there's lots to play for, but it's also a very different picture to what we saw 12 months ago. If we look at England, they've had so many woes, so many horrific series overseas. New coach, as we've already explored. India, very, very interesting. Rahul Dravid, one of the greats of Indian cricketing royalty, or heritage, should I say. And since he has been in charge of India, Jasprit Bumrah is the 8th captain to play under their coach. Now, the thing for me, they've just had a tour match against Leicestershire. I don't think we should read really, too much into that. Let's try and look back at their last few series. They beat Sri Lanka comprehensively at home, which they do every time they play Sri Lanka at home. And there's some real stand-up performers from, I would say, the new generation of Test match batsmen for India. And secondly, they went and played South Africa over there, lost 2-0. Very famously, Kohli, no runs. None of the big boys, the Sharmas, Pant, no runs from those boys. So, they're in a position where arguably they're in a bit of a transition. and it just proves to England as a cricketing, as a Test match team, that there's a real gap for them to really go forward in this Test rankings. If you look at India's record in England, especially at Edgbaston, they've played 6 Test matches at Edgbaston dating back to 1967, and they have yet to win a game at Edgbaston. They've drawn 2, lost 4. England at Edgbaston, 14 Test matches. They've only lost 3. 11 games at Edgbaston, they haven't been beaten. And they went on an amazing run up until a few summers ago of about 5 Test matches back to back at Edgbaston. So lots of green things and sort of the trivia and the stats behind the game. And for me, it's going to be really interesting to see maybe which Indian players to look out for and take on. So for me, Shreyas Iyer, he's only played 4 Test matches, scored some really good runs against Sri Lanka in that home series. He's averaging around 55 with the bat in Test match record. Obviously, a very short career so far. A player who's made his name in the IPL and the white ball game. Really, really dynamic batsman. In recent years, I remember when we were discussing last year about Rahane and Pujara and how they maybe were coming to the back end of their careers. Shreyas Iyer is someone who's a very, very different player to those two. He's someone who will play a runner ball and take on some of our bowlers. So he's someone who's really catches my eye. And then we have the dynamic spin duo of Ashwin and Jadeja, which I am absolutely buzzing for if it does happen tomorrow. There's a selection sort of debate between Shardul Thakur and Ashwin. I think if Jadeja and Ashwin bowl together, then it's going to be a very, very different outlook when we come to the 5th day. Ashwin is a phenomenal cricketer. He's taken 83 Test match wickets against England single-handedly. That's his 2nd highest against any other nation. Jadeja averages 35 of the bat. He bowls an economy against England at 2.3 and over, something which we would love to have, in all those years gone by. So these 2 players, Jadeja and Ashwin, for me, if they both play, then it could be a very, very difficult time for England. Certain tests in the game, against New Zealand, they didn't play with a spinner. Bazball, who was one of my big picks before, so he didn't really get a look in. So, India, very different proposition to what we've seen before. And you've got to remember Bumrah, bowler captain, obviously worked really well for Cummins, but I'm not too sure. For me, a bit of rain about first few days. I'm probably siding with an England win, even with that rain. I think 5 to 6, bit short for me, but it would be my play, definitely.
I'm in total agreement on England winning. I actually think they're a bet, a real bet. India are definitely a high quality side, but they don't arrive here in the same form that they had because of the rhythm of last year when they were very much at the top of their game and we were at the bottom of ours. It's completely flipped now. The confidence alone that we'll carry into that will be massive for us, but also just the fact that we've had a lot of cricket. Nearly everybody who's in there, it's the same side unchanged for essentially the 4th test. It's essentially a 4 test. We're just playing on a different side that hasn't had much for prep. India have had some COVID issues that also happened to New Zealand. They looked very raw and undercooked at times. First innings against us at Lords. They did eventually improve. They probably peaked a bit between the 2nd and 3rd test. And I can see the same happening to India. They did go to Leicestershire for a sort of unofficial official tour match. Some Indians did score runs. There are a few for Virat Kohli in the first innings, though he was out short of a half century, 33. Rishad Pant hit 76 for Leicestershire. They mixed the teams up so everybody could get some game time. Second knock around, Jadeja, as you mentioned, he got 56. Iyer 32. Kohli got 67 in the 2nd dig. And that's probably a bit of a positive sign, but even then, there's such a gap between the tour matches and also I think India would much prefer if it had to do if it had to open up a test series, they'd much prefer to open up on what I think would be a traditionally better batting surface. It's not that they don't have the weapons to take advantage of clouds. Bumrah can, Shami can, but I worry for the batsmen. I think they'll come in cold. Really valuable. I think 5 to 6 is definitely a bet. Where are we looking at in the player markets? Because we've seen some decent price winners over the New Zealand Test series. We've seen some decent price winners in tests involving England over the last year.
Yeah, definitely. I think the backbone of that theory and that sort of play in the betting markets for me comes from two key statistics. So if we look at 2021 and the numbers regarding England and their average per player. So runs were scored at 28.25. So per player in 2021, the average of each player was 28.25. The economy rate was 2.9, so just below 3 and over, which is, by recent years probably slacking, and it was definitely a key issue with England. At points last year we were staying in, but we weren't actually threatening the bowlers, and there was a sense of massive collapse, rebuild, but then things never really got going. If we compare it to this year, obviously it's a smaller sample size, but we're still looking at the back end of the Ashes. The average is up to 37.11, and the economy rate is of 3.9. So we're going at 3.9 runs and over, which tells us two things. One, players are scoring runs quicker, which means we're going to hit those run lines quicker. So if you're backing Stokes, Bairstow, Root especially, who are normally at the moment operating at a run of ball, or just around a run of ball under McCullum or under Bazball. So someone like Bairstow and Stokes and Root, look to really back them if you feel it's the right time in those run lines, and they're operating a limited over sort of strike rate. For me, in terms of players, Lees and Crawley, there was a lot to take away from this series. Crawley does look completely out of nick, but as we know, will be given time, and he is an extremely talented player. That cover drive when he's not wafting outside off stump is brilliant to watch, and he's a talented batsman. I think he's the sort of player as well. I was looking at his county form over the last couple of years, and when he scores big, he really scores big. He scored massive hundreds. I remember I watched highlights from 189 against Hampshire, 172 against Somerset, and obviously that big 250 that he scored against Pakistan for him. So, interestingly, the market for first innings 100 to be made, Lees is 8-1, Crawley is 9-1. I think you can elsewhere you can find odds for both of those players to score 100 in the match in general, at around about 11-2 for both. I think it would be silly to be there watching Lees or Crawley hit a massive score and not be on. I think Lees would look really positive. He looked out of his shell. He was trying something different. Obviously, really unfortunately run out by Bolt in that second innings at Headingley. And I think Lees or Crawley, for me, I know it's going to be a bit of an out there pick, but I really fancy them to score some runs in this test match. And I know that we hear this message of giving them time, but they will be under pressure. They're playing in a really successful England team, or 3 out of 3. And they know that everyone in county cricket effectively wants to play in this test team. Yeah. So they have to score runs. In other players, I think for me, for India, one bet which stands out, I think Kohli looks a bit big maybe for top match batsman or top innings batsman for India. You've got to remember he's averaged 28.4 with the bat in 2021. This year he averages sort of high 30s again, way below those numbers of him being one of the best batsmen in Test cricket. But at the prices, he loves the challenge of playing England. He gets himself up for these big series, these big games. And how many more times is he actually going to come over here and play Test cricket? There's a lot of talk about him, just packing it in, or there's a lot of pressure on him to find other solutions to his batting. So I don't think he's someone you can rule out. Definitely for me. So they're a few of the players, and then as I was alluding to, Ashwin and Jadeja. If it's going to tear up, and at Edgbaston recently, spinners have done really well. I was looking back at some of the series recently. Lyon bowled really well for Australia there in the Ashes a couple of years ago. Ajas Patel took a few as well. Took 7 wickets in the match. So yeah, those two definitely could be something which England have not done so well on recently against high quality spin.
Really good and comprehensive overview there. On the openers point, I can see Lee's carrying the potential to go big. He's been in great touch, and he's also become a lot more confident and definite in his actions, which I think is helping him sort of attack. Is the best form of defense for him, and covering his off stump, which is a big problem in West Indies. With Crawley, I take everything. I take all those points, but the thing is, the nature of batting up first in England anyway, in Test cricket anyway, means you're more vulnerable, I think, as a rule. And it's the driving for me. It is the driving. It is the liability to catch the ball, particularly from Shami first up, also from Bumrah, particularly given the force which he strides forwards. But I take that argument, and I definitely think that the prices are worth chancing. In the player markets, I think this could be another of those tests where the middle order could be the place to look. And, you know, I think it's definitely worth looking at the likes of Bairstow and Stokes again. They're 4-1 and 11-2 for top run score in the first innings. You are taking on route, which is a scary proposition, but something that would have paid off against New Zealand. And I can see it being the case, again, that the best time, the best ball conditions, maybe even the best pitch conditions, they come when you're getting into that middle order. Best has been such ridiculous, Nick. I think 4-1. The market's reacted, but I think it's still fair. 2 for Stokes is definitely quite enticing. I think also this could be a match where ball does dominate bat, and if that is the case, I got to pick James Anderson. I got to pick Jimmy for man of the match at 12.
Okay.
Record against India is ridiculous. 143 wickets. It's lower than 25. The average per wicket. He's rested from his little ankle issue. I actually fear Matt Potts in that market. I fear him really badly. He should have won for my preview in the first dig at I think it was the final test of the New Zealand series. But Anderson is likely to be helped, I think, by conditions. And this is really important. You know, early on the first 2 days, there's likely to be rain about. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw, say, India get put into bat last only a day. I think it will help us move that. So I just think he's interesting. I'm probably also putting him up for the first innings wicket taker, the top first innings wicket taker, I should say. I think 9-4 is fair.
Can I give you a statistic, Will? Just
always you can always give
make you think of the seamers. So CricViz, which is an amazing data source for international cricket, county cricket, they show in that series against New Zealand, there was a 15% less deviation effect. So the ball was not seaming around as much as it normally would for this time of year historically in test matches. And it's quite mysterious. We saw Broad in all of the games complaining about the ball, going up to the umpires. I remember Maria Erasmus was smirking, we're not going to change the ball, putting it through the hole. I do think the way the game is going, and this is a general commentary of the overall test cricket, seamers are in a position now where if they can't take wickets up front, they really are, open for some attack or counter-attacking from the opposition. Salvi and Bolt, arguably two of the best seam bowlers New Zealand have ever produced. We're going at like 4.5 and over against England, and they weren't bowling bad. It's just there's no deviation on the ball. Even with the older ball, you still expect a bit of movement or some in swing or away swing of some sort. So I think Broad and Anderson, for me, Broad bowled way too short at Headingley.
Yes.
Really, really short. And then I think Anderson as well, niggles with his foot. Those two, they look good. I'm still you're waiting for that performance, which is like, they can still win England a test match. Maybe with this team, they don't need to do it anymore because the way we're so dynamic and the way we approach it. But at the same time, I'm still waiting to look at one of those two and think, you know what, you've got a spell in you, which has got India 40 for 5, 50 for 5 sort of thing. And that would be my only problem with those two in terms of a punting. But I don't feel confident enough to back them at all with anything at the moment, just because I don't think they're the level they have been consistently before. One thing with man of the match, if we think it's going to be a resounding England victory, it's probably going to come from the bat. Historically as well, Edgbaston plays well for big first innings runs, where England might go and get a 500 and then bowl India out twice. Ollie Pope, very happy for him. Obviously, looks in great form. Scored a great 80 in that third test, the 100 at Trent Bridge, brilliant. Maybe he has come to fruition now. It might be time to be siding with Ollie Pope. Maybe there's still some value next to Ollie Pope, and it's good to take it whilst we can, because there are the doubters out there still. But maybe Ollie Pope is in the form where at the prices he could be worth backing. I'm not sure. Is he around about 4?
He's 5-1 for top first innings run scorer, and if you fancy him for century, that's 8-1. He's also 13-8 for a half century.
So
he's 5 for the high strike rate also.
Yeah, so they're quite big. They're quite big, in terms of prices. So that could be a factor. But yeah, and I get your point with Jimmy. I think they have done well against India in the past. And a really good statistic is that both of them, all wickets against India, amongst Anderson, Broad, and Wokes, 78% of those wickets against India in the last 3 to 4 series have been caught behind the wicket. So it just shows you the problems India have had against facing these incredible seam bowlers.
That's a really good point. It could also make Billings a bet in any match performance markets. Catches are rated very highly there. And again, he wouldn't need to be in the best stick in the world to add a few with the bat either. So I think that's a really good overview of sort of where we're at. Now that we've gone through all of those, any in-play pointers before we sort of wrap up with our very best bets?
In-play pointers, I think, if England look like they're subject to a collapse, or a collapse has occurred, which could easily happen with the likes of Shami, Bumrah. Bumrah is still world class. He's a sort of character for me who's going to bowl better as a captain. I mean, we're having that captaincy over his shoulders to actually make him perform at a high level, which is a really scary proposition. I think Tackle's a really good cricketer. He could take some wickets as well. If we do find ourselves in that position again, then the pattern of the summer would tell you to back England when they're on the back foot. However, in a one-off game where India, probably got half an eye on the white ball series afterwards, and England obviously having that split now between the two formats is probably going to benefit England. So if England are on the back foot, look to back them. And secondly, keep an eye on players like Ashwin and Jadeja for India. There might be a chance where they come on to bowl in the 4th innings or the 3rd innings of the game, and there's a chance for them to take some wickets. And quite normally with the spinners, if you feel Ashwin is settling into a long spell, Jadeja, apply that logic to the match markets or the innings runs. So, if England are flying, spin comes on, these two bowlers are world class. I love Jack Leach, but these two, it was two phenomenal bowlers. So that's when you look to back India when those bowlers come into play.
Yeah, I'm in agreement on splitting the innings and sort of splitting the difference. First 2 days, there should be clouds, should be rain. You'll get the best of the Duke's balls, which have gone softer a little bit earlier this year, which is something we see in the county game. Also, it sort of transported itself to the test arena as well. So be Seamers first up, and then yes, I'd absolutely look to side with spinners in the 4th innings. Also worth thinking about possibly going low on India's runs in the 1st innings as well, and then maybe sort of easing up for the 2nd on that. I definitely wouldn't want to take them, 325 or so is about evens. I'd look to get against that if they can get a couple of runs early, and if the openers can stick around a bit. Best bets. You kick off just 3 best
Do
bets.
do you wanna do it like 3 points or 4 points on it? Should we do it in our nap next best or do like that?
Yeah, yeah. Go on.
My nap is the highest opening partnership, so the side which has the highest opening partnership. So I'm going to back England at 11 to 10, and that will be my nap for the Test match. I feel India at 8 to 11, maybe not completely justified. Shubman Gill, really big fan, really like Shubman Gill, but again, I don't really remember him last summer standing out for me in that series against England. Hasn't played over here for a year. Will come over. Can see them losing a wicket early with the new ball. Obviously, I said that there'd be a 50% deviation from the swing later on, but with that new ball, I can see India probably losing a quick one. Both England openers, lots to prove. Massive Test match for both of them, and I fancy them to go big at some point. So my nap for the Test match is England 11 to 10 to have the highest opening partnership. And my next best will be either Lees or Crawley to score 100 in the Test match. Quite ambitious, but at 9 and 8 to 1 respectively, I think it's good to be involved with those sorts of bets. And that'd be my 2 picks. I'll chuck a wild one in a minute or so.
Okie doke. Love it. My nap is simple. It's England to win. I think that they're a completely different side from this time last year anyway. The situation has been reversed as far as the series goes. I think India, don't get me wrong, a very good side with lots of quality, but I believe that lack of game time and the impact of preparation is going to leave them very vulnerable, particularly at a venue that England like. I have to be all over the 5 to 6 that start offer. My next best, I'm going to go for a big price. I'm going to go for Jimmy Anderson to be man of the match. If we get the perfect conditions the first 2 days, there's a high possibility that he runs for a side whose batting lineup he knows very much inside out. He knows Kohli's game inside out. He's against opening bowlers. You'd imagine he'd be given the ball to open with as well. And then from then on, he can get on the roll. He can take his pick of Indian batters who just aren't settled yet. And we saw this last summer anyway. They came in, they lost the World Test Championship final. They were a bit rickety early on, and then they managed to settle, and he was a bit less effective. But I think he could be really good in these situations. I don't think it would take much for him to get into that man of the match betting. And I'll tell you what, for the third, my third selection, I'll take another price-based punt, and I will go for Ben Stokes, 11 to 2 top run scorer. This is taking the Bairstow route. It's a little bit scary with the leap, but Stokes has been in brilliant touch anyhow. He has not been that far behind Bairstow, but he scooped out a couple of times, pressing the accelerator. He plays Indian bowling reasonably well. He's in good touch. He's feeling definitely the benefit of this relationship, and I can just see a big set of runs from him.
Yeah.
And also you're getting 11 to 2 as well, which I think is fair.
Yeah, that's really good. I think that's a really good shout. And I think my throw-in bet would be Shreyas Iyer. I think he's 6 to 1 to be first in this top run scorer. If England have an early breakthrough or a good start, I think 6 to 1 with Star is a really, really good price. And I think he's the sort of batsman who can come in and put the foot down and take on some maybe, Potts. Let's hope, fingers crossed, it's not just a blistering start, and this is the start of a really long, consistent career for England. Because I think he's got it all, and you can see that from 3 tests. And it reminds me a lot of Jimmy when he came onto the scene, and he just the mould of Matthew Potts is brilliant. But yeah, fingers crossed, because we've seen it all before with England seamers. They start off very strong, and then injuries and all sorts come back to haunt them. So Shreyas Iyer for me is a bit of a throw-in, and going into the one days and T20s later on in the summer, I think he's a ridiculous talent, definitely.
I fully agree on the talent of Shreyas Iyer. What a great place to end this preview. Thanks so much for joining us again, Oscar.
Yeah, brilliant. Can't wait. Fingers crossed another England win. And if there was a price on England doing a clean sweep of all their tests this summer, I hope you can price it up for us, because 7-0 is what we're all feeling at the moment.
Absolutely. It is a new era. This is Bazball, and we are absolutely loving it. Thank you so much for watching this preview. Click below for a synopsis of some of the best bets. And don't forget, of course, to stick with Star Sports. Cheers.